Yo, welcome to the video. 55% of games on Steam make less than $1,000. This video is really, there's no editing, no fluffing about. This is really just a how-to guide on how to make your first commercial game. So that hopefully you are in the 45% who can turn making games into their career. So if that doesn't interest you, then feel free to head off. But if you do just want to get the facts and the information without any fancy fluff, please do stick around and yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Enjoy the video.
Hi, welcome to the video. I'm going to be talking today a bit about how to make a commercial indie game. And I think this is really important because it's not just about making your first game, it's not just about getting started with game development, but it's also about ideally like monetizing it and making it into your career, which is a dream for a lot of people. It's what I'd like to do. But obviously it takes a while to get there, and I'm personally not there yet. And so I'm going to sort of talk through the steps of what I think kind of consists of creating a commercial indie game and supporting it and building yourself along the way and building up your skills. So we've got like intro, make games the right way, development, marketing, release, and post-release. So that's all the good stuff. So first we got the intro. And I've thrown in just some random shit on the slides, so enjoy that. So first, who is this for? So this video is kind of for anyone, regardless of if you've sort of just started or if you've kind of made a couple of games before. Even if you've released some commercial indie games, I can assure you that like there'll be some sort of new nuggets of information in here that you mightn't have had been told before, you mightn't have experienced. And it's just kind of feel free to bookmark it to jump to whatever chapter you like, at your leisure. And so my personal experience, so the reason I'm presenting this, obviously I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about commercial indie game development. I've released two games, so Fish TDX and Bug TDX. They are actually in the wrong order, but my first game was Bug TDX and my second was Fish TDX. In total made about $7,500 from those two games. So not nothing, but certainly, not enough to kind of propel myself into a career of game development. But obviously through this, I've learned quite a bit about what it's like to release a game, what it's like to market a game and to develop one and all this extra stuff. And so this kind of presentation will be a mixture between my own experience and also things I've kind of, I might have learned through assimilation or osmosis, I suppose you should say, like of hearing what other people say, and then also, things that I've heard from people like Jonas Tyroller and whatever, things that I've personally put into practice. And so let's start with like making games the right way. So, just before I get into this too much, like making games the right way is really, really ambiguous. There's heaps of games with a buggy, messy code base or spaghetti code or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, they're still games and they still get shipped. So it's not really about finding perfection. It's about finding something that's good enough and you can still ship a game. So first is choosing an engine. Choosing an engine I think is not really as important as people kind of chalk it up to be. Like if you had never made a game before, I would just simply suggest Unity or Godot. Unity has a much bigger ecosystem, so there's more tutorials, there's more resources, there's more assets, there's more plugins and stuff, just because it's been around for longer. Whereas Godot is open source, so it's a bit more trustworthy in terms of paying it and things like that when you're releasing a game with Godot. I personally use Godot just because I prefer the interface and I like using GDScript because I've used Python before. But like realistically, it actually doesn't really matter. Like the biggest games made at the moment are not made with Unity nor Godot. So, and I will say, like looking at the output of any particular engine, it might be interesting to see like, oh, top 10 games made with Unity or made with Godot. But like at the end of the day, it's kind of just the engine is just a tool, and then it's about how you use that tool. There's also, you can go with a custom engine. This is actually how I technically started. So I used Love2D, which is how I made both Bug TDX and Fish TDX. It's kind of tricky. Like if I could go back in time, maybe I wouldn't have started with it, but I do think I learned quite a bit. from starting with the custom engine, and it still wasn't quite as bare bones as something like OpenGL or starting with just C and C++. So I used Lua, which, if you don't know, Lua is a very, very straightforward programming language, which is why I enjoyed using Love2D. But yeah, I would not kind of ruminate over choosing an engine. I would just go like pull the trigger, get started, and jump on an engine and yeah, start playing around. And so yeah, that being said, like how do you actually get started? So there's kind of a couple of different ways that you can go about learning game development, and of course, like the learning never really stops. You can get better at it over time. You might get more experience, and it might feel like you're no longer learning, but you always are. So you could get started with a tutorial. So this could be something like, I started Unity with a Brachy's tutorial, which was quite a few like 10-minute videos just breaking apart like how to make a very, very basic game. That for me was a good way to start. And then taking that tutorial, and then you've got sort of two options from there. You either watch another tutorial or you do this second bubble. So expand on a tutorial with a unique idea. I would say probably the best way to learn, or my favorite way to learn, is kind of something along this vein. So taking a tutorial, watching it, and then even if I'm, completely unfamiliar with everything, still thinking, okay, what would be a cool thing to add to this tutorial game? And then going about figuring out how to actually add it, because, it can be difficult to get started with something really simple. And then you could also trial and error a basic game. So I kind of do a mix of these first three, and even the fifth one I do a lot of. But yeah, trialing and erroring a basic game it means that rather than having everything presented to you in a really clean way in a tutorial, you sort of get that first hands-on experience, because at the end of the day, like, you're learning how to make games, not how to follow tutorials. And so being able to trial and error a basic game is a really good way to start. You might want to watch a couple of tutorials before you get going with a basic game, but I really like to start with something like really, really straightforward, sort of circles on the screen and you click them, or like a really basic platformer, or an incremental game, or like an idle game. They're really good to start with because, you don't need lots of graphics for them, but you can just work on the back end. And then when you do have that basic game, it's important to add like sound effects and a menu and all that kind of stuff that would come with a bigger game, just so you can get the experience in creating UI and sound effects. But yeah, it's sort of up to you, up to what you want to create, the complexity that you want to do. Just try not to scare yourself off by trying to have this massive ambition for your first game, because the reality of the matter is it's going to be pretty small. So then you could watch a 3-hour course. I kind of hate this method. Like, I think this is a terrible way to learn. A lot of people claim that it works for them, but for me personally, like, watching a 3-hour course is a great way to like get, 20 minutes of useful information, and then just like 2 hours and 40 minutes worth of like just mindlessly clicking the mouse and like following along with the course. And there are some courses that like claim they do it better, and they say, oh, we teach you how to learn all this extra shit that's like obviously just, marketing at the end of the day. Like, no judgment from me if you do start with watching a 3-hour course and that is like the best way you think you can learn. But I just feel like there's so much information in the middle that it's just going to lose, and you're just going to have to revisit constantly. And you end up with this game that like might be great, it might be complex, it might have all these different features, but it doesn't actually matter if you don't know how to implement those features yourself without rewatching that course. So it can be a good way to like get familiar with an engine if you're starting like that, but like realistically, if you can start with something like trial and error, or just like small tutorials that you build upon yourself, at the end of the day, you're going to be so much better for it, because it means that you're not sort of used to having someone guide you along every single step of the way, which, I don't think that's a good way to start. And then the fifth one is using AI as a teacher. I do a lot of this, like, it's not necessarily as a teacher or as like a tool. If you're stuck with something, you can ask it a question. I think it's good. It's fine. AI is wrong a lot of the time. I know that there's AI plugins in Unity now where you can ask it, make a game that does this, and it will do that for you. I personally try not to use it too much, just because I like game development. So even when that challenge comes on, I find it fun to like overcome it myself. And it's not quite as satisfying if you ask AI to fix it and it sort of fixes it, and then you keep prompting it until you get what you want. Because that works sometimes. Like, I think that works well with shaders and stuff like that. But when it comes to your own personal preferences, it's really hard to cater AI to the way you would do things. And so it ends up being the final product is something that you've in part created, but also AI has in part created, which for me is less rewarding. But I still think it's a really, really good tool. Like, I definitely recommend using it. It gets you ahead. It means you can sort of pick up the basics a lot faster with like programming languages and stuff like that. So yeah, I recommend it. So then we've got get better faster. So once you've kind of got the basics, this is all about like getting better. And it's not necessarily about like working, 10 hours a day, like, fucking making games and pumping shit out and whatever it might be. It's just about, versus the time you invest, making your skill or growing your skills in a way that reflects where you actually want to be. So for example, like making lots of small games is really beneficial. Like you can see on my itch profile, I think I've got like 4 or 5 games that are literally just like black and white, very straightforward arcade games that I just made to teach myself like the basics of an engine and kind of how to, create interesting game design and maybe interesting graphics. Not that there's a whole lot of that. Particle effects, all that kind of shit is just, it's super easy to break all of that stuff up into small bits and just work on a small game that maybe uses particle systems or a small game that does this or whatever it might be. Then the second is constantly source feedback. This is definitely a lot. It's easier to say and hard to do because at the end of the day, like solo game development is really like an individual process. So there's not going to be that many people around you that are really interested in trying everything that you release. And if you do have that person, you're incredibly lucky. But it's, you might just have to like push it on, say, ask your parents, hey, can you play this and let me know what you think. It might not be your target audience, but it's a good way to get feedback if people don't enjoy your game, then they're right and you're wrong. Just presume that. And yeah, I think it's just important to continually source feedback. And I'll talk about a couple of ways that you can grow a bit of an audience to do that. But I'll talk about that a bit later. The third is challenge yourself. So, that might be creating a 3D game when you've never created a 3D game before, or, trying shaders and creating your own shader, even though you mightn't have done that before. So it's all about like just continually trying new things and challenging yourself and trying to overcome those challenges. And AI, again, is a helpful tool, but if you're able to consistently overcome these challenges yourself, it might take a little longer in the short term, but it means that in the long term, you're setting yourself up with a massive skill set that isn't propped up by, this dodgy scaffolding that might be AI. The fourth is be consistent. So you just like work on it a little bit. I mean, I hear people do 10 minutes a day of game development just so you stay familiar. It stays in the back of your mind. You can think about it when you're, not doing anything else. I personally have quite a particular schedule that can be hard to maintain, especially during the uni semester, but I do 1 day a week of game development where I spend about 8 or 9 hours just sitting at my computer working on a game. That works a lot for me, but I'm sure that doesn't work for a lot of people. Like it might be easier to do 30 minutes, 3 times a week or something like that. And as long as you're kind of being consistent and you're growing your skills, it means that you just get a bit more confident and you get that little bit closer to actually being able to work on a project that is of a scale that could be released commercially. And 5 is, I don't know, this template came with 5 things, so I've added a 5th thing, but it doesn't really matter. All right, so next is good coding practices. So this is kind of what I was talking about a bit before. Like, there's definitely a mix of good coding practices, but also like releasing a game. Because if you make everything super modular and you're like really impressed by yourself and you're always spending heaps of time in the back end trying to kind of set yourself up for the future or whatever it might be, it just ends up kind of wasting your time. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just like whatever, you want to release a game, you don't want to release the code. Like that's not what it's about. And I find that especially making your own engine is a really, really good example of where you might prioritize good coding practices over releasing a game. which is great. Like, if you enjoy that part of game development, then like go for it. You know, at the end of the day, you're doing it out of your own enjoyment. If you don't necessarily care as much about monetizing it, then don't. But, you know, for me personally, good coding practices, it comes down to finding that really light balance between setting something up that is intuitive and is, you know, established in a way that I can remember and reflect on and use, but also not spending too much time thinking about every single edge case or trying to make one system that fits everything. So I think it's important here. I've got a bit of computer science background as well, so I'm able to use that knowledge about object-oriented programming and stuff like that to get good coding practices. But yeah, a lot of it, again, comes down to like making small games. And if you try and expand on your small games, you might start to find a point where you think like, okay, the amount of refactoring I would need to do to continue developing this is probably not worth it. And when you reach that point, it might be worth considering like, what systems have I set up now that are kind of hindering my development or slowing me down or whatever it might be. And then for your next project, you might think, okay, well, last time I built an audio system like this, maybe I'll try something a little different. And it's just about learning through that iteration and continuing to grow as a developer. And then it also is a big part of it is making functional art, which is actually really, for me, I'm from a programming background, as I just said. So like art is definitely the hardest part. I think my new game is a bit better, but even then, like people say, someone left a comment on my itch page saying, yeah, the game is fun, but like the art is not very good. And that's hard for me because like obviously art is a really tricky part of development. So the way I started doing art was not the way at all you should start doing art. If you're an absolute rookie with creating art and creating pixel art and you think everything you make is shit, unfortunately, the best thing you could do is just keep making art and keep producing and spend more time doing it even if you don't love it, because eventually it's just going to click. And when that does happen, it's going to be great. You're going to be all better for it. So with BugTDX, what I used to do is get images, like 128 by 128 images, or even bigger on the internet, and like literally just like scale them down in Sprite, cut out all the white space and export it. So it's probably not legal, but it was the easiest for me to do at the time because I didn't think I was good at art. And because I didn't think I was good at art, I wouldn't do art, so I wouldn't get better at it, and it just promoted this cycle where I would just kept creating shit art. And then in FishTDX, I really tried to, because that required a lot of art, because I needed to create a sprite for each tower. And there I just tried to kind of pump out as much art as I could. I had a workflow that was pretty much just like draw something shitty in Illustrator, export it, and then just use it. Like there was no kind of refinement. Art was very much like the second thought, rather than like the first step. Which is alright, but is probably worth spending a bit more time on art. So making functional art's really important. Getting a palette and sticking to it. So this is what I suggest. So get a palette and stick to it. Stick to a particular resolution. So I found that like if I make my screen 320 by 180, and then I'm bound to creating art within that range, that I've only got so many pixels, there's only so many pixels I can fuck up. Also like use image references. So if you find images online that are similar to what you're trying to do of pixel art or of hand-drawn art or whatever, use those as references. And then also just like practice, keep making art. I think using assets is great. I personally haven't done that before. I probably will. Like I'll use assets for pixel art for UI. I think is a big one. But try not to get like too carried away with it because it's kind of a balance. It might mean you make a great game now, but in my opinion at least, and this is very subjective, in my opinion, I think it's good to be able to do everything yourself. And so if you're constantly taking assets and you rely on assets, it means that, you know, you're never growing that skill and you're never going to be able to get to the point where you stop using them. So there does reach a point, if you do want to stop buying assets, because it's, you know, it's a cost at the end of the day, then you do have to kind of start investing time into making functional art. Development. So yeah, unfortunately you can't see the one in the corner, but it says, anyway, it doesn't matter. the development of your game is obviously the most important part, or one of, I guess it's not necessarily the most important part, but for me it is. It's the most enjoyable part for me. It's the time that feels the most exciting because you're kind of always adding new things or balancing or whatever it might be. So it's important to get it right. And there's a couple of ways you could say getting it right, but the first is like starting off with an idea. There should be, I guess, quotations here. That's all right. So the first way that people get an idea is they kind of think of something when they don't know anything about game development. They start learning game development, and then they think, all right, now it's time for me to create that idea that I had before. And it's just like not a good way to start. I think you need to let ideas come naturally to you as you learn game development, because you might start with thinking, I want to create this massive first-person shooter that's like Halo, and I want to add like more movement mechanics, and I want to add multiplayer, and I want to have some like cool like effects or spells like Valorant or whatever. And you have all these cool ideas, and yeah, they might make a great game, but there's no fucking shot that you're going to be able to make that. Like, it's literally just not going to happen. And then people from there, they think like, oh, well, why would I learn how to make games if the only shit I'm going to make is like the 2D clicking a button on the screen or whatever? And so they just don't bother learning. But then you realize as you actually grow your skills at making games, the ideas sort of come to you naturally, because you realize, wait a second, these small games, they've actually got a lot of like niche potential. And I always wanted to create, like, I was inspired by Nuclear Throne a lot. And although it looks very straightforward, Nuclear Throne has a lot of sprites. It's got super polished art. It has terrain generation, all this complicated stuff. And I quickly realized, like, oh, I might not be able to create a game like this for quite a while. But because I was already at a point where I was confident with the engine I was using, I was able to just like start ideating and trying out new things. And I realized like, oh, this is a fun little idea. It was tower defense. And that's, how I birthed Bug TDX. So miracles do happen. And so, yeah, think of an idea that's realistic. It's good if you are always creating small games. Sometimes it just naturally occurs where you just expand on a small game enough where, it's worth expanding even more to become a commercial product. So let them happen naturally. Don't go with your first idea. Always like look for the fun. Which I think Jonas Tyrola said. So then the next part is kind of managing yourself. So I'm going to presume by this point you know how to make a game. You know how to do development. You know good coding practices. You know all that shit. Like, it's very straightforward. So the first part is managing scope. This is a really tricky part because obviously you actually do need to, create a game with some content in it. So you need to get that balance between creating a game that's not too big and not too small, just right, with, adding features that you can, as one person, reasonably implement, all that kind of stuff. So I would say stick to the small side for your first project. A lot of people just are built different, and their first release on Steam gets them like millions of dollars and they blow up, even though it's their only game, like Balatro or Stardew Valley or whatever. Like it definitely happens. If that's you, then go for it. But for what works for me is sort of having small scope, having a clear end in sight, working towards something rather than just trying to make the biggest, coolest thing I can make. Because at the end of the day, I want to release this game, I want to sell this game, and I want to move on because I've got other cool ideas that I want to explore. Next part is sticking to a schedule, which I talked about before. So for me, it's just 1 day a week. For you, it might be after work. It might be on a Saturday. Just make sure that you stick to it. And this is really important. I think it's really important also for exercise. Like, the days where you least want to do it, that's probably the day where you need to do it the most. And that's because if you don't do it on those days, then eventually, those days are going to get easier and easier to not do it on. And those days might overtake the days where you actually do it. And that's kind of where burnout comes in. You just need to in my opinion, you need to keep pushing through. I haven't really felt extreme burnout like what I've seen other people experience. I don't know what it's like to be entirely burnt out. But for me, it's always just like, even if I really, really don't want to do it, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to do it, I'm going to push through, and eventually, it might take 15 minutes, it might take 30 minutes, it might take an hour, eventually I get back in the rhythm and I start enjoying it again. So just for me, it's about pushing through. I don't know what it is for you, but this is just what works for me. And then real talk. So motivation and expectations. So this is tricky. So I'll be a little upfront with you. When I was creating Bulk TDX and even Fish TDX, like I had this really unrealistic expectation that I was going to make all this money and be able to do it as my career. I think it was clearly unfounded. Like the quality of the game wasn't there, the art wasn't there, my marketing efforts weren't there. I wish I'd had a video like this so I could watch it and learn all the shit that I was doing wrong. But I thought I was really doing it very well. And at the end of the day, like I created minor successes, but my expectations were so astronomically high that I was disappointed. And that's not a place you want to be. Like you kind of want to have low expectations. So if you do happen to surpass them, then you're happy about it. And at the end of the day, like I still like looking back on it, you know, it's absurd to be disappointed about making, you know, $7,000 when I was 18, 19 doing game development. Because it's still like a lot of money. And so that's expectations. And then motivation is another really tricky one. So I like to distinguish motivation and discipline. Like, let's be real, you know, you're not going to love every part of game development. Like, I think maybe I give off an impression that I am always having fun, I'm always enjoying it based off this YouTube channel, and it's always like this really cool exploration. But yeah, it's like with anything, you know, there's going to be parts of it where you just, like, you've had enough, you know, you just can't do any more. And it's like what I was saying before about burnout. You know, you just need to keep doing it. Like, do you want to create... The question I ask myself is, do you want to make this game, right? Do you want to make game development your career? If you do, then this is what you have to do. You got to. Like, there's no other option. And that's what gets me through it. Because at the end of the day, I'm very much motivated by, you know, being able to create more games. Because I love doing it. And I like having something that I've worked on and I can show for it at the end of the day. So motivation, expectations are definitely... I probably won't spend too much longer on this slide, but they're a massive part of game development. So just motivation, stay disciplined, stick to your guns, because I know you can do it. Like whoever's watching this video, if you want to do it, you just can. Like there's no mountain too high, there's no river too wide. You can do it. You can definitely do it. It's all about having the precision, the determination, the discipline, and managing your expectations so you can get there. And when you do get there, you're able to look back on what you created and you're able to be proud of it. And then you're able to do something next. So next is polish. So there's So with polish, this is really important of any game, indie game or AAA game. There's always games that come out that don't have good polish. And I think it's not maybe as important as some people think. Like if you've got a good game at your core, you're able to get away with being a little shabby with your polish. But I do think it's a great way to kind of show that your game is not just a little indie game, it's actually a commercial product. Because it's kind of a step up. It's how you elevate your game. So I'll kind of briefly talk about each one of these. So first is gameplay juice, like creating stuff like screen shake, particle effects, things that look cool and make the game feel fun to play and like nice to play and satisfying. Like Nuclear Throne is another really good example because like when you shoot a gun, there's like this and it's like it's kind of very explosive. It's really satisfying. It's pretty cool. And I think that's a great example of like impeccable gameplay juice. Also about, you know, creating cool looking maybe UI effects or something like that. The next part is visual cleanliness. So visual cleanliness is kind of, it's related to making good art, but it's also just like being able to know how to make the art you're creating look really clean. And I think maybe this image isn't the best photo because the first isn't necessarily too like unclean or messy. But yeah, the second one's a lot nicer. I think visual cleanliness comes from just having a really particular aesthetic across your game, and you not really crossing that, or not really having anything that pops out as something too incongruous. So like a good example, I think, is a surprisingly good example is like Nubby's Number Factory. has a lot of like really nice visual cleanliness because it goes for an aesthetic, and definitely search it up because like it's pretty cool. It goes for an aesthetic and it fine tunes it, hones in on it, and everything is correctly in place. And the aesthetic looks like it's just a bunch of random shit. It looks like an ugly game, but realistically, like, it's a beautiful game. Like, it's incredible how they've just created such a cool aesthetic and they've stuck with it. And at the end of the day, like, it all fits. And it's great. I think that's a really, really impressive case of something that you might think was easy to create because it was, it was ugly. But in reality, I'm betting that was probably pretty hard to maintain, all that 3D art and all the stuff that had to come with that. The next part is nice quality of life. I don't know why I put this photo in, but quality of life is really important. Like, buttons like hotkeys that might do something, or I don't know, like adding stats to your page or shit like that just kind of makes the game a lot easier to play and reduces that friction. And I think friction is a really important part of like roguelikes, because I've always created roguelikes. So you want to kind of make it as easy as possible to start your next run. And so for another game, that might be as easy as possible to start another level or start another campaign or whatever it might be. But it's just about having everything in place such that if a player wanted to, they could just start. They could just hop in. They've got everything they need in front of them. It's all presented to them in a nice way, which leads me to my decluttered UI. So this is so real. Like, I don't play many RTSs, and a lot of the time I don't play them. It's just because like there's so much fucking shit on the screen, and I didn't really grow up with RTSs, and I just don't really know what's going on, right? And so it's important to have like a decluttered UI and just show what's important to the player. I think Nuclear Throne does this well. Like, using icons is really important, not relying on text. Making things expandable and close, making sure any one piece of UI doesn't take up a large part of the screen, because then you can imagine if you have two things open at once, it might, look very, very messy. Fish TDX was, I really tried to do a decluttered UI. If you look at it just from the screenshots, it probably looks fine, but, there's all these different tabs, and if you open all the tabs at once, it does, at the end of the day, look pretty messy. So it's hard to kind of get that balance because there's so much going on the screen. So just having a UI that's minimal and only showing what you need to show at any given time is very important. And so then kit. So keep it simple, stupid. So here I'll talk a bit about like my own experience, because I haven't really talked about Fish DX a lot on this channel yet. I do plan on doing sort of a deeper dive into it, but you could obviously tell they're very, very similar games in the sense that they're both tower defense. And one of them was you just had towers in that little, that little like bar, and you'd roll through the towers and you'd play them, and then you just go through a stage, and there were 20 waves, and that was that. Like, that was the end of it. I hard-coded all the enemies for each wave. It was very, very straightforward. Fish TDX, I was like, okay, maybe Bug TDX didn't do too well because there wasn't enough going on, which I don't know why I thought that, but I had all these really cool ideas, and I think Fish TDX looks cool. Like, you can see there's so much going on. There's all these different strategies with like placing towers in the right places, or choosing a particular path for the fish. And there was so much more going on. It was really, and I created like a really modular system, so I had like 80 towers or something like that. So much content. But at the end of the day, like, people aren't necessarily playing a game because of the amount of content. People are playing a game because at the core of it, there's a really simple, fun gameplay loop. And I don't think with Fish DX I was quite able to get that. I just added too much stuff onto the game, and I presented it in a really, really overwhelming way, such that it would scare a lot of players off. So for your first game, like, just keep it simple, and think about out of those two photos, which one do you think was easier to develop? And if you're guessing Bug TDX, you're definitely right. Fish TDX took a while to get working. There's all these different things happening at the moment. There's things now, like, still, I think the game's got like a memory leak or some shit like that, just because there's so much stuff going on at any one time, and it's hard to clean everything up. But yeah, no, it is still a really fun game, and if you do want to create something that is a little more complex, like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just about presenting it to a player in a way that's intuitive for them to understand, and kind of drip feeding them new content and new mechanics, rather than like barraging them with new stuff. And if it is your first commercial game, like, being more simple is not a bad thing. You might think like, oh, it'd be great if you had this feature. Maybe if you release the game into early access or you release it, and you do get some reception, some positive reception, maybe then it's worth experimenting and adding a new, more complicated feature. But if it's your first game, if you don't have much traction for marketing, it's better to keep it simple and just like work on the bare essentials and create a fun game rather than create a complex game. And so balancing and bug fixing. So the F word, here the F word I think means feedback. So it's just about cultivating a community where you're able to constantly get heaps and heaps of feedback, which is impossible to do. Like, I'm not going to pretend it's easy to do. I don't have that. A lot of people don't have that, especially if it's your first game. You're probably not going to have that. But yeah, I think just releasing a game on itch.io, if you can release it in the browser, that's great because it's easier to play. And just like collecting feedback and just kind of seeing what people say about the game, what the general sentiment is. Definitely leaving a feedback form in the game so people can give you very, very quick yes or no answers, like was the game fun, how long did you play it for, stuff like that. And then just like working on balancing and bug fixing the game. So these are really, I think, depending on the bug and depending on how you're balancing, these can be really easy ways to get like cheap points. So it can mean that a balanced game can definitely be the difference between having fun and not having fun. And I think Fish City X is hard because if I just go back, like, because of how much stuff is going on, or this way, I guess, how much stuff is like going on in the screen, it's really hard to balance because there's all these different fish, there's all these different effects, there's all these different like artifacts, and you have like in this photo you've got $613, which is obviously way too much. And so yeah, it's very, very hard to balance. So yeah, it's about finding that balance that makes the game kind of fun and consistently a challenge, but never too difficult, never too easy, all that good stuff. And then bug fixing is like pretty grim. Sometimes you can have bugs that are just like are there for no reason. Sorry about my hair as well. But they're there for no reason, and then you just have to like push through and find something that works. And yeah, that can be pretty tricky to do, but yeah, it's just, again, it's about motivation, it's about discipline, about pushing through, and at the end of the day, like releasing a product that isn't riddled with bugs, because it's much better, especially if it's your first game, it's much better to just delay it by like 1 or 2 months than release it with a whole bunch of bugs, because in the off chance that your game does get picked up by a YouTuber or a streamer, or it gets a bit more traction on Steam, if a lot of people have a bad experience with bugs, they're gonna like not play it as long, they're gonna refund it, the stats won't be in your favor, and then your game won't maybe pop off as much as it could. And so our next part is marketing. So marketing is the bane of most game developers' existence. It can be so boring, and it is so boring because it's not really about making a game. And you don't have to do it. Like, if you just like making games, you don't have to do it. But if you do want to make games into your career, it is good to kind of, if you can, work on getting your game to as many eyes as you can. And so let's get started. So first is growing a community. So you could do YouTube. I'm obviously doing YouTube. It's not like, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Like, I more just do YouTube just to like give myself something to look back on when I'm like 50 and I'm kind of like, oh, I wonder what I was doing when I was 21 years old. Oh, here we go. I was like making Bleak and shit like that. So that's why YouTube is helpful. Discord is really, really good. I think Discord's actually a really underrated way of promoting your game. If you're able to grow a community by adding Discord links to your game itself, and Discord links on your Twitter, or if you post on Reddit, like suggesting people to join a Discord, it's a good way to like cultivate people who are actually genuinely interested in both your game, but also you, and like they kind of want to help you out. They want to support you, and a lot of like people, I think I can credit my games, quality to and success to is actually because of my Discord community. Like, they are like genuinely really nice people who are just there to play something that they find fun, but also they want to help me out and give me feedback about bugs or gameplay or whatever. Like, it's just, it's a nice place to grow a community that's interested in all kind of the same thing, which is your games, or your YouTube or whatever it might be. And then the third is social media. Don't worry too much about what that tweet says, but social media is like, can be good, it can be bad. I've heard that the conversion rate for wish lists on places like TikTok and Instagram are not too good. I haven't explored that. I just can't be fucked. It's just such a boring prospect to create vertical reels and stuff like that. I do think social media is probably worth it in the long run. Like if you are interested in marketing your game, it is definitely possible to get a viral post and get a couple of hundred likes. And when you do get that, you're able to kind of build off that traction and kind of turn it into a snowball if you're smart about it. This is definitely, and I think it's in an upcoming slide, but it's definitely, all of these definitely depend on your game. So, marketing is a really tricky thing to get right because you need to spend time marketing, but you also need to spend time making your game look nice and look fun. Because if your game doesn't look it doesn't look good or it doesn't look fun or both, people are just they're not going to be interested. They're not going to be receptive to your marketing regardless of how you do it. Because it just needs to have those qualities because at the end of the day, people are buying your game, not your ads. And I think, I talk about that. Oh, not quite just yet. So also we've got the value of your niche. So the first is YouTubers. This is so massive. I can't stress this enough. Fish TDX and Bug TDX would not have been nearly as successful if they didn't have the support of the niche. So YouTubers, for me, it was Alexa and Retromation. They are day ones, they are G's, they're great. I sent my games to them over email. I just sent them a key, said this is what my game is. I followed what Luck Be a Landlord developer said, which I've forgotten his name now, but that was really helpful. But yeah, getting your game to YouTubers and then they're able to, because they're obviously looking for good content. They're looking for interesting new games. They like playing new games. They like supporting developers. So if you're able to get your game to them, they're able to broadcast it to a much wider audience than you're probably ever going to be able to obtain. So YouTubers can be absolutely fucking massive. And I don't actually know what YouTubers are like in other communities. I only imagine there's a niche for everything these days. So if you are creating a movement shooter FPS, there will be a niche for it. And I'm sure you're probably already in the niche. If you watch YouTube, you're probably already interested in that. So get in touch with those YouTubers, create a list is a good way to do it. I'm not going to share my list just because I think there is value in finding it for yourself. Mine's not comprehensive. I don't want to share that detail necessarily publicly, so then they all get spammed with a bunch of emails. Definitely do your own research into the value of your niche and into the YouTubers you can contact. The next is Discord communities, and Discord communities and Reddit communities are sort of the same or very similar. They kind of stem from each other. And so what I mean by that is your genre. So if I'm creating a roguelike, or another big one is an incremental game or a visual novel or anything, there's always going to be a Reddit community for it. And that Reddit community is always going to have a Discord where you can go on and you can do whatever you want. You can promote your game, you can join in on conversations, you can be a familiar face. And if you're generally a nice person and a friendly person, people are going to be interested to see what you have to say and what you're creating. Don't be a dick. Just don't. It's not worth it. Even if you reckon you're getting an online argument or whatever, just, back off. And at the end of the day, most people are just there because they're passionate about, whatever you're doing. And I say that because I have seen a couple of instances, especially on r/roguelikes, where people have, been not so nice to each other, but, you're just there for discussing the game at the end of the day. Now, I've got two big things here. So, the first is most games don't have universal appeal. So do not just market your game on r/games, for example. You'll probably, first of all, your post will probably get removed just because no one really gives a fuck about your puzzle platformer or whatever it might be. But yeah, don't market your game, don't buy Reddit ads for the whole of Reddit. Maybe just try and specialize into a couple of different subreddits. Also, don't market to other devs, which, is hard not to do, especially if you're doing YouTube. You will be probably marketing to other devs. People who are interested in game development content on YouTube are often developers themselves and might not necessarily be interested in your game as much as the way you're creating it. For example, Thin Matrix, it does these really cool aesthetic game development videos, but me personally, the game that he's creating at the moment, I'm not going to buy it. I'll just be upfront about that. It doesn't look that interesting. I'm just interested in how he goes about creating games, and what his lifestyle is like. So try not to market to other devs because the conversion rate will be low. You might think you're doing really well because you're getting however many views on every video. But oftentimes that doesn't actually convert into sales. So definitely prioritize marketing to people who actually might play your game at the end of the day, rather than people who just will leave you a wish list and then leave you dead in the water. And then here's another really important thing. I actually don't know if I added a slide for it, but when you are collecting wish lists, Steam kind of values your wish list conversion rate. So if you have 50,000 wish lists, which is quite a lot, like you probably won't, I've never had remotely close to that. But if you do have 50,000 wish lists and you only get 1,000 sales, Steam thinks that your game isn't, it's not actually quite as good as people thought it was. So that can happen if you do have a game as a YouTuber, as a game dev YouTuber, and you release it with 50,000 wish lists, and you don't quite have as good a wish list conversion rate. It might mean that Steam doesn't promote your game, as much as it could. If you had less wish list, therefore a higher conversion rate. So a good amount of wish list to aim for is about 7K. I do think I'll talk about that a bit later. But why graphics matter? Graphics matter, bro. Like, the sad truth, a lot of these slides is just like slides for myself in the past, and this is definitely one of them. And I am very much the clown in this photo. Like, graphics matter quite a bit. A lot of people think, especially like a lot of gamers think, I don't know why they think that, but they think that like gameplay is so much more important than graphics, because they play a game and then they like the graphics look nice, but they're like, oh, well, I'm only playing this because it's fun. I'm not playing it because it looks good. But like, bro, like the way you discovered the game was probably because it looked good. You wouldn't play a game that looked like shit, right? And it's just the sad truth. Graphics matter quite a bit, so you do need to invest time into it. You do need to make sure your game looks good for marketing. And it's very, very rare when a game can get away with having bad graphics and still be very popular. It does happen, but it's very rare. And so if you're able to, not necessarily prioritize graphics, but make them look appealing and make them look pleasant and inviting is a big one. Then you're gonna be much better for it. So then we've got like release and post-release. So I think this can be, I think it's supposed to be release and post-release, but then kind of reflecting on it. So when you have actually released your game, how do you look back on it and think like, okay, I did this well, I didn't do this well. So I'm going to guess by this point, you're probably still watching the video, but you haven't actually released your first commercial game yet. So if you have, you might already know a lot of this as well. But for those who are still watching the video, obviously, thank you. So this is metrics that matter. So first of all, 55% of games make less than $1,000. So if you're able to do more of that, make more than that, you're already doing pretty well. You're already doing above average. Give yourself a big pat on the back. The median refund rate is 8%. The average is 10.3%. So you can see with with mine here, I've got 12% of Steam units were refunded. It's always going to be disappointing at the refund rate because especially people just buy games, try them out and refund them in less than 2 hours, which is fair enough. Like, it's there for a reason. So don't be too discouraged, but if it is over that, you probably have done something wrong. Like, the lower you can get your refund rate, the better. And I think bugs contribute to that a lot. Obviously, the quality of your game contributes to that a lot. Here, so I've got 12% of Steam units returned. I don't know if I talk about it in these slides, but in my other video, I did talk about bug TDX and why I thought people were refunding it. So it's definitely worth looking into that. So the next part is 50% of games have a user score less than 80%. So if you do get a user score less than 80%, don't worry. Like, it's just, it's your first game. It's not really a big deal. It's at the end of the day, people still bought it. For me, I was really fortunate, I don't know really why, but I had 91%, which was great. If I got that in a test, I'd be pretty happy, and so it's kind of a bit like a test. So I was pretty happy with that. The median playtime differs quite a bit. So a good goal was 1 to 2 hours. I kind of was just scraping into that 1 hour mark, but that median time played is really, really reflective of how well you're able to hook players from the start. If you're able to bump it up so less people spend 10 minutes playing and more people will spend 20 minutes playing, it makes an astronomical difference in these metrics. And when I say these metrics matter, they don't necessarily just matter to you from a feedback point of view, but they also matter because this is what Steam uses to actually promote your game and get it into the eyes of more people. So if your game has made more money, or if it does have a low refund rate, or it's got a good user score, all of this stuff contributes to actually creating the perfect Steam game that's pushed to as many people as possible. Which is kind of how your game can snowball. Even if you don't have a whole lot of marketing, it can eventually snowball and it can get picked up by YouTube creators, and it just will. Like, if you've got a good enough quality game, if you've got incredible graphics, you're able to get there. But yeah, it's hard to get both of those things. And then I've heard that internet consensus suggests that success comes from about over 7,000 wish lists. I don't know how true this is. Apparently, this is how you can get onto new and upcoming, which is like a little Steam tab where you can see your game on the front page. And so when it's on the front page, obviously it gets a lot more traffic, so it can get even more wish lists. I had 689. That's not maybe as many as you would hope for, but still fine for a first game. Definitely aim for about 1,000. It's alright if you push your game back by a couple of months. If you do want to continue marketing, you've already finished creating your game. It's, if you do want to accrue wish lists, like, it's a good way to do it through marketing, through social media, stuff like that I talked about before. I think I released this with 64 wish lists. So, probably aim for a little more than that. But yeah, 689 is fine, right? It's like 7,000 though is the goal. So if you want your first game to be very successful, aim for 7,000. But yeah, you just want to release something. You want to release something and get that into your habit. And so then ongoing support. So this depends on like the success of your game. So if you have done really, really well and you've got a big player base, then it can be good to do not only lots of patches, but also content updates, because then it keeps those engaged in your game and it keeps them coming back for more, because they obviously want to discover what you've just added. But if you're able to, like, if you haven't released an incredibly popular game, like me with BugTDX, you kind of need to know when to let go. And so you kind of need to stop doing content updates, because realistically, like, your time is going to be better spent working on something new. And so patches are still really important. Like, if people do happen to discover your game, down the line, you want to make sure that they still have a good experience with your game. You want to act on every single bit of feedback and bug fixes and stuff that you can do. But yeah, you're not necessarily bound to doing content updates. Even if you maybe promise to the 4 people that are watching, you were going to do a big content update, it's okay to cancel it. It's okay to move on. It's better for you to move on, I will say. And then fucking run it back. Like, that's kind of it. I don't know what else to say, Then once you've created a game and once you've learnt that new skill, and that's what this image here, this image here, that's what that says. But yeah, like, once you're able to do it, once you're able to do it, just like do it again, and kind of keep growing those skills and keep getting better and keep practicing and keep trying your hardest, and you'll continue getting better, and eventually, in my opinion at least, eventually you'll kind of create a game that resonates with a large enough audience where you might be able to do it as your career. So please do like and subscribe for more high quality cinema worthy experiences like this. Thank you so much for watching to the end, to the 4 people who did. This was definitely a much longer video. Please like and subscribe, whatever. Play my games. I don't know. My demo, actually, good point. My demo is out for my new game. Please go and play that as well. Just good luck with your game development journey. I hope this was of some use to some people, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.